Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. We are here today with some outstanding shooters. We're going to be talking a little bit about rimfire, a little bit about PRS, a little bit about some scopes. Super excited you guys could hone in today and listen in. Shayne, Brandon, how you guys doing?
Good. How
Doing
you
good,
doing,
man.
Mac?
Just living my best life. Every day that I get to talk shooting is a good day, I think. So I appreciate you guys being on. Before we jump too much into the weeds, so you guys know, I had an opportunity to meet Brandon when I was at SHOT Show this year. He was over at the March booth. He was sort of giving me a little bit of insights about what was going on over there and his involvement. But I haven't had an opportunity to meet Shayne, only through Brandon sort of explaining. So I'd love to sort of talk about your guys' relationship. How do you guys know each other? Is it competitors? Are you neighbors? How did this work out for you guys?
So yeah, I mean, it's hard not to know. Shayne, he's a 2024 Golden Bullet winner for the Rimfire series. So, um, obviously knew him inside of PRS circles just for that alone. We also share quite a few common friendships in the PRS circles, and he's done quite a bit with the Gravestone, Jake Graves at Gravestone, and that's a fairly local range to me. So. We kind of knew each other in passing, and there were some other individuals that we kind of pulled into a March demo program, and it just kind of so happened that Shayne was kind of asking, "Hey, what does it look like? If could I get a March? Like, what's that kind of look like?" And kind of grew from there. And honestly, I think we've spoke probably more in the past month or so after getting the scope sorted than before that, but yeah, that's kind of how it all happened.
What about you, Shayne? Any other perspective from you? Is this a guy that's been hounding you, or are you guys buddies?
No, man, I enjoy Brandon. We haven't talked a whole lot before all this kind of went down, but we've gotten to be buddies, and I enjoy talking with him. We talk PRS shooting, and we talk life, and I've we've had some good, interesting conversations on the phone. We talk reloading, you name it. So it's been a pleasant experience.
Good.
I won't tell that to most people.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
images to uphold, man.
Well, I'm glad it's working out for both of you guys. For those of you guys that don't know, right, PRS shooting, precision rifle shooting, typically through some different leagues, right? We have centerfire, we have rimfire. We're going to be talking about that a little bit today. Brandon, as far as I really know, you focus a little bit heavier on centerfire. Is that right?
I do. I actually don't shoot a lot of rimfire. I don't have a ton of time. I've got two small boys that take plenty of time, running around doing all sorts of things. So I do primarily focus on the center fire. Not that I wouldn't shoot rimfire. I just don't have time to do both. So kind of pick center fire, and that's been kind of where I'm at.
And Shayne, you're lined up in. Brandon did mention that you do shoot centerfire as well, but you seem to be real honed in on rim. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Sorry about that. I uh, I honestly have been so busy this year shooting, traveling, and shooting 2 day matches center fire that I have not shot really any rimfire to speak of. I am a match director here in North Texas for rimfire, and I will shoot those matches. Actually, I'll take new shooters and do like a training match with them. But I haven't actually competed in any rimfire at all this year. So looking forward to getting back out there.
Texas, man. I mean, my wife and we live in California, right? I get a lot of hate on that in general, being in the shooting community. But I tell my wife all the time, I either say we're moving to Phoenix so I can be over Ben Avery, or we're moving to Texas because that's where, I mean, Jesus, the shooting out there is so competitive, so strong. They're doing something right out there, right? I think they're feeding you guys lead in your cereal when you guys are little kids or something because it's crazy. You guys are doing it. Um, so let's talk a little bit about your guys' experience with shooting. Why did you get into it? what sort of drove you to what you guys are doing now. And I actually haven't had like a ton of opportunity to, even on your side, Brandon, maybe some big wins. It's time. This is the time to bolster yourself up, right? Tell us why you guys are the men and what you guys are doing. Brandon, why don't we start with you?
So let's see. I was always interested in long range shooting. It's something that you know I inherently was always interested in starting getting into long range. I had been hunting the vast majority of my life, and ultimately I picked up an OEM gun. It was a Ruger Precision back then, and I think it was 2017 I started shooting. Um, I went out to a match. It was a rough day, but I was kind of hooked from that point on. I don't know how many matches I've shot now. We're probably over the 100 mark or right at the 100 mark for PRS. Somebody could check my PRS page, I'm sure, but been quite a few. There's several regional wins in there, and then obviously several top 20 2 days. I've had some things health wise that have come into play that unfortunately have hindered me in the last couple years, but looking forward to getting back to it. And honestly, a lot of my time now is spent, at least in the past year and a half or so, of working with March to bring the scope in, and just half the time I feel like I'm talking about the scope more than getting to shoot myself. So
Yeah, sure. What about you, Shade?
Uh, I just went through this conversation the other day. I got involved in PRS, I believe, in the end of 2020. I shot a rimfire match. Rimfire is actually what got me involved in it. And 2021 is when I really uh, started shooting and chasing it, and just shooting rimfire. And um, kind of like Brandon, I was always around, grew up, hunting and fishing, and always enjoyed shooting, and wanted to teach myself how to shoot long range, and just found PRS, and I guess since 2021 I've uh shot a lot of rimfire 21 and 22, and then 23 I shot a few centerfire matches, and I guess last year was the first full year of shooting pro 2 day matches, and I probably had 4 or 5 top 10 finishes this past year, and I've got I believe 2 top 5 finishes this year, and of course, won the Rimfire National, the Golden Bullet, last year in Rimfire. Again, last year was one of those years where I honestly, I feel like I sound cocky when I'm saying this, but I really didn't shoot any rimfire last year either. I only shot enough just to stay relevant. I was really chasing center fire, and just shot the ones that mattered, and happened to win the ones that mattered, and was blessed with winning that. But man, I love it. Love the community, love the people. Uh, it's been good for me.
It's a real testament to marksmanship as a whole, right? Being able to transfer skills from one discipline to another. A lot of people maybe think that because you shoot one discipline that you can't transfer those skills to another, and that's what I talk about a lot through Black Plague is. How do we be multidisciplined? How do we, we spend so much money on this gear. And this is going to sort of talk about, March a little bit, right? Because they are so diverse in their optic systems that we spend so much money on this gear. Originally I got into shooting through PRS, and I have now transitioned over to F class shooting. But I shoot a hybrid rifle, right? Something, luckily, I built very, very high end for my PRS, and so it's been able to carry over. But it's a real testament to what you've been able to do, and both of you sort of being able to switch a little bit back and forth between the two, and be competitive. And I love when people are cocky on here. Be more cocky, because that's what people want. We want to hear, right? We want to know sort of those real experiences, and sort of diving in a little bit to you guys are connected, and we're all sort of connected here through March. And I know originally that's why I had reached out to Brandon was he had an integral part in the development of the new scope that they've released for PRS. But let's talk a little bit about creating partnerships, right? Because there's a lot of shooters that compete. There's a lot of shooters that want to be sponsored. And this is not a roadmap necessarily to get sponsored by March. So don't go reaching out to these two guys. But, how does that sort of work, right? It's very interesting, and I sort of explain these to people because I have the unique opportunity to talk to so many companies across the world and see who they're sponsoring. And it's not always the best shooter that's out there, right? Sometimes it's the best person for that brand. Sometimes it's a person that aligns with their values. So far as your guys' relationship with March, how does that sort of work out, Shayne, for you guys and being part of getting onto that ambassador program?
Well, you want me to be cocky. I try not to be. But in this situation, it's definitely not because I'm the best shooter. I fit the role as far as try to be a good ambassador for the sport. I think that's important in a lot of people's eyes. And man, I don't really know the right answer for you there. I apologize. But I I tested the product and was floored by it, blown away by it, honestly. And it was just something that I think was meant to be. Honestly, it was honestly the stars aligned with timing and everything. And um, I, I apologize. I wasn't ready for this
Oh,
question, but
that's a great answer. Yeah,
I
that's a great.
mean,
Well, the ambassador for the sport, I think, is a huge part on that, right? And you're hinting on that is a lot of times people don't fully grasp the idea that it's an individual sport, so it's a lot about me, right?
mhm.
And for these sort of brands, it's about what can you do for everybody.
I think that's a big part of it, man. Like I've already said, there's a lot of great people in this sport, and then you'll meet. It's like everybody you meet, you want to be friends with, but there's going to be guys that just stand out above the rest, and you can see that those guys are helping new shooters and trying to actually make a difference and grow. And I I I was introduced to a few of those different people in early on in my journey, and I always I really appreciated that, and I knew moving forward that that's the kind of person that I wanted to be, remembered in this sport. It's with today's with the competitors, the amount of competition that's at, the level of competition that's in this sport right now, it's going to be tough to stay on top or, even get to the top, but and especially stay on top. But if you can be remembered for someone that's, trying to grow the sport, I think is, a great thing too. And there's a lot of people that I know that are sponsored by different companies, and it's not necessarily about being the best and just winning. It's about being a good representative, for the brand, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That totally makes sense. And Brandon, I don't know, maybe yours is a little bit different because you're real locked in over there, right? I mean, you get a scope, get to design a reticle. That's a big deal, right? I mean, you're leaving a footprint on the industry as a whole, and then to be able to tie that into what I think would argue is one of the most outstanding and one of the most integrated scope companies in the world into our community, right, is pretty amazing, right? So,
Yeah,
how did you
so
sort of get
it's a bit of a
aligned
long
with
story, so
March?
luckily we got a little time here today. So I'm quite good friends with Timothy Vaught. He's a very well-known F-class shooter. Um, Back in I guess 22, he had a prototype for March, which would go on to become the Majesta. and he was at SHOT Show not this past year, but the year before last, and March basically said, "Hey, look, Tim, we'd like you to do the same thing in PRS that you've kind of done, and being an ambassador and kind of a counsel to the sport of PRS." And Tim said, I'm really not the guy for that, but I know a guy that is, and I think he could bring some very positive things to you guys, and he kind of set the bridge for that. And in the beginning, it definitely it was kind of a slow process at first. The Japanese folks at March are hugely prideful, and they take amazing strides in trying to make sure that their quality of their product and just their morals and moral compass and everything about their culture is represented in March. And as a result of that, you don't earn the trust of the March folks easy, right? That's something that comes with time. And in the beginning, like most PRS shooters who, didn't necessarily know who March was within the PRS circles from a scope perspective, I was like, man, Tim, I don't know if I really want to take this on. Um, this seems like a lot of work. Uh, and I said, I tell you what, send me one of the Gen 1 models for the 5 to 42 at that time, and I'll just look through it, and you know, let's go from there. And it was kind of like Shayne had alluded to. As soon as I looked through the optic, I was like, wow, um, the optical horsepower in this scope is absolutely incredible. Um, so from that, I kind of had made my mind up, and I told Tim, I said, look, we'll get through this, we'll work through it, and we started doing. I kind of already had a reticle designed, and not all the conversations went super easy. Influencing folks that don't necessarily um, share that entire outlook for the entire industry, right? March didn't have a ton of experience in PRS as far as like what the PRS competitor needed as far as reticles and some of those things. And we kind of just I went from a ground approach, like everything and anything that I ever wanted to see in a scope or that I ever disliked about any other scope or loved about any other scope, right, wrong, or indifferent. We tried to take all of those kind of lessons learned and literally package them into a package that, like, I honestly think will absolutely make waves in the market. Um, and that's kind of how it started. And then a year later, we had prototypes, and we put them through tests that um, I would never do to a personal scope on any rifle that I was going to shoot in competition. And they just, they really truly are an outstanding product. And Deon Optics, who owns March, they're not new to this, right? This is not a company that just showed up last week. March has been building scopes for other OEM brands and other disciplines, for many 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 years. So um, this is not like their first approach at trying to get an optical system to work, right? That wasn't their issue. It was the look, feel, reticle options, things that PRS specific shooters wanted. That was really what we really needed to help along. And we went from a kind of started off little, fairly slow, and then by the end of it, they kind of understood and they saw feedback from the expo and they saw feedback from the pro-am when Mari went and shot as my amateur at the gap grind. And after Mari had seen what the PRS was really about and really had taken an opportunity to shoot, there was very little question about why some of the decisions were made and why, like, hey, the turrets have to be this way and the markings need to be this way. The reticle needs to do this. It needs to be usable in these ranges, and like all of those looks, feel, reticle choices, all those things kind of came together, and there was really no question after that why we made the decisions we did, and they were full steam ahead after that. So they've been super receptive to anything and everything that me or any other shooter really has provided to them. And we get tons of conversation points. Hey, why did you do it with no tree? We need a tree. We don't need a tree. I don't shoot a tree. I shoot a tree. Hey, I'd like to see this. I want locking turrets. I don't want locking turrets. What I would encourage you guys to do is to reach out to me, reach out to March, continue those conversations. Um, we're going to continue to build upon this. March is not planning to go anywhere in the PRS, and this is the first rendition of this. So keep working at it. We're trying to make sure that March stays relevant, and that's part of it, right? Listening to shooters and keep trucking forward.
Yeah, absolutely. March's story is so interesting. I had an opportunity to talk to a bench press shooter by the name of Lou, who was one of the original guys in it. We talked for a little bit, and I'll go ahead and put that link in the bio if you guys are listening for Mari, who works with March and went and shot a PRS match. Crazy cool video. You guys are definitely going to want to check that out. But I can definitely see it's we're in an interesting community, right? Because we are very discerning about the equipment we get. People are so brand loyal, so brand loyal, but we love new gear. We love new gear, right? So it's so interesting that like people are locked in, right? And especially when it comes to optics, right? I mean, I've been following, PRS for a decade now, and I can remember some of the names that were out there that was like, if you don't have this, then you're losing, right? And that's the reality of what they were saying. And now that field is open up a lot. And you're seeing a lot, and I sort of look at this the same way with action companies, where you saw sort of what I would consider very, very high end customized actions that were made for like bench rest and F class that were now trickling into PRS and RIM. And you're seeing that same thing with March, right? Like you sort of talked about this, that March is not new to this game, right? They have a lot of hunting options. They have obviously are super locked in for F class shooting. People use them for bench as well. And now they're coming in and they're doing this with PRS. And my job is to be somewhat unbiased about optics, but I own a March. I can't help but love it. And so I always get really super excited, if you guys can't tell, to talk about March scopes. So far as your experience, Shayne, right? I mean, I know that you haven't been shooting March scopes your entire time shooting, so I don't want you to necessarily throw any optic companies under the table, but maybe let's talk a little bit about why you sort of went that way, right? A March in your guys' world is an unknown, for a lot of people, right? And I'll just sort of be honest here. My biggest, I've done some videos on March when I was at SHOT Show, things like that. There's been a lot of issues necessarily with the size of the reticle. There's like Brandon was saying, the tactile feel, the way that things show up, because you guys are moving so aggressively in your positioning. Things have to be sort of situated, right? Tell me how this experience has been for you.
Man, overwhelmingly positive. So touching on the brand loyal thing, I didn't shoot for any optics company before this. I had a brand that I had shot pretty much religiously, and I've tried them all. I have,
Nickname's
if
Bubble.
you can't tell, I'm legally blind. I I have I've shot all the different optics, and for one reason or another, usually for field of view and um, just there were several reasons that I always stuck with what I had, and I knew that I was giving up um, some some things in it, some things that I was looking for, let's say, but I was also gaining, in other areas, and uh, the first time I looked through this March. I was really, I was honestly blown away. I still remember the first time I looked through it. I threw it on a sandbag. It wasn't even mounted in rings yet. And I threw it over my side by side and looked through it. And I was like, I think I said, "Holy shit!" The reticle was, perfect to my eye, size wise. And again, everybody's going to have a different opinion. But man, it fits the bill for me in so many different ways. I love the turrets. I love the feel of the turrets. I love the fact that they're all markable. I've never had a scope that lined up on the parallax knobs for for my eyes the way I need a diopter set. So there's just so many positives to it, and it's not something that really that I've ever looked for. Being the compactness of it. It's not That's not a necessity for me, but it's a positive that it happens to be smaller than the scope I was shooting. But man, it's got amazing field of view, um, amazing glass. Um, I can't really describe it's hard to describe the glass to someone. It still allows me to I can cut right through Mirage and see exactly where I hit on a target, but it doesn't. This almost sounds like a negative, and I don't mean it to be that way at all. It cuts straight through the Mirage, but also allows me to still see the direction the Mirage is moving, so I can adjust wind calls and make appropriate, corrections. And it's everybody that has looked through it is pretty much, except for those brand loyal people. And you
I
can even
shouldn't
tell the
like
brand
this.
loyal ones when they look through it. I could, if you, yes, yeah. But most people say the same thing that I said is, "Holy shit, this is good."
Mhm.
And then they start playing with the knobs and they realize, they were only on 30 power, and
Mhm.
they crank up the horsepower, and it's like, wow, it's still great.
Mhm.
So um man, there's not really nothing not to like about it, not to love about it, in my
Mhm.
opinion. And I for one knew who March was. Not a lot of people do, but I knew who March was. I knew that they, made very good glass, and I uh, I for one wasn't worried about the scope whatsoever. It was as long as it fit what I needed to see, and it actually surpassed it. So I'm very happy with it. I have done some testing with it. Um, with shooting a rimfire, I've tested it on all kinds of things now, and what I see now, as opposed to where I was, is it's. I feel like if I could ever put all the pieces together, it's going to be a game changer for me for sure.
Yeah, it's quite impressive. Now I haven't been able to take it outside. I'm still working on trying to get one over here so I can do a little bit of testing on it. But when I was at SHOT Show, I went pretty much from ZCO to Collis to March, almost in that order to look at their highest level of scope and look at that field of view. Collis had just came out with essentially their new scope as well. And so it was interesting to see them back to back to back like that. And there's something to be said about seeing it indoors, but it looked really really good, right? And now it's hard to, unless you have them all by each other and you're like measuring the decimals for the tactile and everything like that to say apples for apples. But the March is super nice, right? And I run the 8 to 80, and so I already know a lot of the features, a lot of the the work in that go into these things to make them the way that they are. But it was really cool to be able to hear from Mari, hear from Tim, hear from Brandon and Gary, the whole team really. I mean, I think I was there for, I think in total almost 4 hours between 2 days. So I got a pretty good lowdown, and I know that there's some things that have come out since I've been able to see it that Brandon's going to go over, which I'm pretty excited about. Hopefully, you're going to be excited about these sort of things that they finalized on this. But to really get an in-depth view of what's happening in this development and how this is designed and purpose built, right? So, Brandon, let's talk a little bit about that, right? Your involvement, jumping in, this reticle design, the overall design, and how that's really come to be what it is. And if you could remind us, if you have it on you, the code for your scope. I know it's like
Oh, the
6 or 7
actual SKU number?
letters, so
I'm
I
gonna
always
be
forget
completely honest with
exactly
you.
what
Good
it
luck with
is.
that. I don't actually know. I'm not gonna lie to you, but
Yeah,
I will say this: when you go to the March
yeah,
website, the model that you're gonna be looking for is the FX, which is their first focal plane series. You scroll down to the 5 to 42, it will be the only one that says PRS edition next to it. That is the PRS specific model. There is also a Gen 2 model, which is the same optical system, minus the PRS turrets, my reticle, and some of the tactile changes and such in the turrets. It is a standard. What's that?
I think the reticle, the EBR one.
It's the
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think the
FML-WBR
reticle's
is
the
the reticle.
EBR one. Is that what it
Yeah,
is?
it's okay. We'll let the rimfire guy go.
Oh, I was
yeah.
way off. Sorry for
So
interrupting.
the so Mac, you hit on some points, and Shayne, you did too. You know, something I had to learn as a shooter that's kind of done this hybrid scope design development assistance, right? Um, I'm not an optical engineer. I don't claim to be. The folks at March have spent their entire lives doing that. They have particle physicists that look at light path through scopes. Like the level of detail that takes to get something like this to the market. I don't care whose name is on the side of it. I think most shooters really undervalue just how difficult that actually is. Um, Everything in the scope design is a compromise. You give up certain elements when you do certain things, and you get additional things there. It's if you've got 100 stat points, you can't put 100 in every single stat you've got, right? So, there's compromises there. There's tons of good optics on the market. Um, Collis has got the new optic, right? They have tons of field of view. They actually have more than a March. Nothing to hide there. Um, there are compromises when you go to the extremes, and you know, um, that's one of those things where you have to pick and choose your battles, and you have to hope that you've packaged the best all around package. And I think March has done that as far as like the reticle design and feature sets that we changed, between this model and other models. They sent me a prototype, and I felt the turrets, and I said, yeah, they're good, but like they're not tangent theta good, right? And if you're someone in the market, um, that that's one of the things that a tangent's known for, right? Is they just have phenomenal turrets. Like, you can't take that away from them. I will tell you, I think we were right there with them now. It took 600 different detent revisions to get us there. That's the level of effort March went through to put into this optic for that particular topic. Um, and just all of the different things, right? Hey, we need to figure out how to make a writable turret from the factory. The first time I sent that over in an email, I guarantee you the folks at the Deon Optics were like, he wants to do what? And they didn't really understand why, right? And we had to work through the nuances of that and show them scope tapes and things that the PRS industry has done, or the PRS community has done to shoot and make optics work for them. And ultimately, we just culmination of tons of data from shooters, from my own experiences. I have literally shot just about every scope that's considered within the PRS circle, from just about every brand. Um, ultimately there's always something about a scope that you love and something about scopes that you hate or you dislike. And I really wanted to try to find a package that I could honestly hold in front of me and say, there is nothing about this scope that I dislike. Um, and I was trying to very much put that in a position where when someone like Shayne picks it up, he can say the same thing. And that's a very difficult thing to do. It takes a ton of time and effort to get through those things. But ultimately, we wanted to build a scope that is purpose built for PRS, and it doesn't have anything you don't need and everything you do, right? Um, this is not a scope that is designed to have 17 miles of elevation travel for an ERL guy that wants to shoot 6 miles, right? That's not what this scope is for. This is a PRS specific scope. It just happens to be very, very good in that category, and it does roll its way into hunting applications, and it does roll its way into NRL hunter stuff. And in fact, Gary Costello is using it over in UK to shoot ERL matches with on some of his rifles. So um, you know, Shayne, you talked about the Mirage and being able to like cut through the Mirage, but still have usable Mirage. That's something I think is very particular to March that a lot of people don't know. Most of March's experience in the past few years has been living at 80 power against black targets in F class with tons of Mirage, right? And learning how to make that usable for some of the best wind callers and some of the best reloaders in the world. That those applications have absolutely helped March leverage designs and efforts into this scope. And I will say that I absolutely do believe if you get behind one of these, you will see that it absolutely cuts Mirage like nothing on the market. Um, I, Shayne, you could probably add to that, but I encourage everyone to get behind it. If you see me at a match, in a PRS match, please don't hesitate to ask. If you see one of the marches with the turrets, right? You can easily identify the PRS model. It's got the silver turrets and says PRS edition on the side of it. If you see one of these scopes in the line and you want to go look at it and take a look and look through it, I'm almost certain the individual will let you do that. So, I you know, Shayne, you said the same thing.
Absolutely.
We have had all different levels of shooter look through this thing, um, and almost always the first response is, "Holy shit, the glass in this thing is really good," and they're kind of taken back by it. And then usually the follow up to that is, "Wow, the field of view in this thing is massive. You can see a ton." And then it kind of just it continues, right? Hey, parallax is very forgiving, and man, the turrets feel good. Man, I like the reticle. Man, it's usable all the way. For even 42 power is usable in the PRS, right? If you wanted to roll it into a know your limits plate at 1,000 yards and really get a better image, right? So all of those things, are things that we brought to the market that may not necessarily be available right now in the PRS market, and trying to package into a 5 to 25 frame, right? So I've got one here. It's hard to show on camera, but if you look at this thing, it is not a very big scope. It's on par with most of the 5 to 25 models on the market, but it is a 5 to 42.
No.
It's a 34 mil tube. The other thing that you'll notice, let me pop the Tenebrex cover off here. See if we can get this on camera for you, Mac. If you look at how thick that scope body is, it's 4 mil. This thing is built with PRS in mind.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I said, we did torture tests of this thing that I would never do to a normal scope. And we had one take a tumble at K&M. I don't want to say what brand scope mount, but a very reputable scope mount. It fell so hard it bent the mount. The scope tracked.
Wow.
very reputable scope mount. So, guys, they're robust. Um, I'm not going to say that you're never going to have a scope failure. It happens. This is a mechanical thing with tons and tons of pieces in it, right? Um, but the idea is that you get it taken care of if you have an issue, which March absolutely stands behind their products. I'm working with them now to try to get some stateside options available for me to help leverage scopes to end users if something should happen, so that you're not out of scope while it's being repaired in Japan. They do ultimately have to go back to Japan. Um, you wouldn't want me putting your scope back together, guys, I promise. So, but all in all, I think it's going to be a great package. You mentioned the reticle. I haven't talked too much about the reticle, but we can maybe segue into that. Um, it's a labor of love. There are very small things that you change in a reticle that make huge differences when you put them in a scope. Um, and you're talking numbers down to third decimal place that you wouldn't think you can discern and see, but you can. Um, I wanted a reticle that was super simple, that was fast and rapid, that you could use, that had 2/10 marks, but also had a point .5 indicated mark. Um, I didn't want a point .5 indication above the center or below the center uh, stadia line. I wanted something that was alternating so that your eye could rapidly make the difference between 2, 4, 6, and 8, but also have the point .5. So that's kind of how that happened. I wanted mill marks to be very discernibly different, but be the image that you're used to seeing as a shooter in the reticle, which is the center dot. So that's why each mill mark has a floating dot. Mac, I'm sure you'll overlay the reticle. You guys can see what I'm talking about. But and the
Yeah.
target use was basically 12 power all the way to 42 power. So I've actually used it at 42 power in PRS matches at very small know your limits plates, 1,000. I've used it for zeroing and load development at 600 yards for doing like load development over E targets. The extra horsepower magnification is not something you necessarily use all the time in PRS, but it doesn't hurt you to have the ability to be able to roll it up, right? Doesn't hurt for it to be in the scope. Um, Most of the guys, Shayne, you can probably speak to this, and I don't know if it's true for you, but some of the other guys we've had shoot the optics have said they tend to leverage a couple more magnification than they were leveraging on their previous options that they were shooting in the market, simply because the field of view allows shooters to, at least at the highest levels, do that because they tend to have very good fundamentals and their natural point of aim is solid. Um, but it plays the other way into new shooters, right? If you're a guy that wants to shoot at 15 or 18 power with a march, you're going to have more field of view. You're going to be able to pick up targets faster. If you're a guy just starting out, or a guy that's in the mid pack that your target acquisition isn't quite there, and it's going to help you, right? You're going to be able to see more downrange. So I mean that was kind of the whole premise behind the scope, right? Like that's where we started. That's what happened. We spent a lot of time in the turret area. Um, you know, click spacing, writable turrets, turret field, detent, the way that it, like, all of that stuff seems very subtle to the end user, but the amount of time that you can spend on detents and springs to make something feel a certain way, it's a labor of love. So March has spent a lot of time getting it there.
Yeah, and Brandon sort of threw some balls your way, Shane. I don't know if you want to talk about any of those.
Yeah, if I can remember some of them. One thing I was going to say is it's it allows you to shoot with more horsepower in PRS for the simple fact of it's the field of view is still there even whenever you're zoomed in, but it cuts mirage so good where I would start losing or my image would start degrading on a real mirage day. I could still get up 25 power with this thing and shooting positionally and still be comfortable. So
Mhm.
it's man, again, it's everything that you want, nothing that you don't. Um, I don't remember the other thing that you said something about,
The
but it's one of those things. One of those things that I said right away is you almost can't take somebody's word for it.
Mhm.
Seeing is believing.
you know
Get
I
behind one of these things and check it out.
I've had a
It
couple
sells
guys that have
itself.
shot the March, and they've gone back to a backup rifle, and they've got other offerings, and they're like, dude, you can't unsee that, right? You can't unsee the field of view, and you can't unsee the horsepower capability, and like, you know, you go put a tape on your dial, and it's not quite lined up, and just being able to mark your windage turret and your parallax and your elevation turrets, and adjusting it for you. It it's just, we tried to take everything that the shooter always had to kind of fight with or manipulate on his side, and just put it in the package straight from the factory, right? Um, and like Shayne, I know you've mentioned to me quite a few times that you like the reticle and that it was fast, and I've had this conversation with quite a few shooters that have shot the March and looked at it. Even at SHOT Show, we did um, a bunch of iterations of people just looking at different reticles on the market, no names on them, just looking at them and going like, okay, which one do you think is easier, faster to read? And I got one single comment quite often, which was, I don't know why this is faster or easier, more intuitive for me to find things quicker in the reticle, but it is. Have you found that, like, knowing where point 0.4, having the alternating with the point 0.5, have you found that that combination has made, like, your target acquisition queues for holds and stuff faster?
I don't know if it's made anything. I'm
No, I
not
want you
going
to
to
be
say
honest.
probably what you want me to say. I don't know that it's. Yeah, no, I'm going to be 100% honest. It was a smooth, seamless transition to move over to this reticle. And I like what I like about it more is I love the the 1 mil marks, absolutely. And then the reticle thickness. I know that's um, a lot of guys gripe point on different optics or different brands or whatever, but I think this one is a home run. It is exactly where I would want it to be when I want to shoot down around 14, 15 power, and it's exactly where I want to be if I um, need to shoot it at 30 plus power. So it's again, no complaints from me in that aspect. And the reticle is I immediately took to it. So it's very intuitive, and very. I mean, it was a seamless transition. So um, if a dummy like me can do it, I think anybody can.
It's funny, right? Like, so let's see, Shayne. We started talking about getting the demo scope, and uh, we were going to Best in Texas, and I said, hey, I'll be there, and you'll be there. Um, I'll bring it to you. And there's a couple other guys that are in the demo program, so we kind of got those out. And I remember specifically saying like, hey, man, look, there's no pressure to shoot this at Best in Texas, right? Like, I don't expect you to take this thing and throw it on the gun right now. In fact, it's for demo purposes, right? Like March is so confident that when you get behind the scope, the rest of it will do it. The product will do the rest for you. Um, that they've, you know, Mari at March and Deon, super grateful. They have allowed me to put 5 scopes into a demo program, um, where guys will get them for 90 days. Uh, no questions asked. No obligation. Try the scope, tell us what you think, and we'll go from there. And so that's kind of how it happened. Shayne was in the demo program, and I think you literally took it out of the box, set the box on the front seat of your side by side, threw it on a bag, and you were like, "Yep, this is going on the gun right now." And I
Yeah,
was like,
I
"Are you sure?"
so I actually brought an extra mount with me, and I remember riding down there. And my wife was talking about trying that scope out, and she's like, "Well, you're not gonna try it at the match, are you?" And I said, "I don't know." She's like, I wouldn't expect you to do that. You're crazy. So I looked through it and immediately was blown away. And I went straight back to my truck and actually put it in a spare mount. And I went over to the zero board. And so I actually didn't get down there. We're at Texas Precision, which is in Central Texas, and um, it had rained, I think, for 170 straight days before that. And
Yeah, for sure.
so and Mirage in Central Texas, when after especially after it rains is all there. But and this was high noon, I guess, probably. I think at 11:30,
Yeah, I
12
think it was
o'clock.
right around lunchtime or just before lunch, right?
So yeah, I went to go over to zero board and check my zero with my existing optic, and I'll never forget that I had to shoot on about 12 power to keep the target from dancing. There was so much mirage already, and I'd shoot a group and then crank up and try to see where I was, check my zero. And I really did not want to change, a scope before a match like that. And I just remember walking back over to the side by side, grabbing that march and putting it on a bag at the zero board and looked through it and cranked up on it. And I was like, wow. I immediately walked back and got my fix it sticks out of the front seat. And she's like, I can't, my wife was with me, I can't believe you're fixing to do this. I put it on, and first shot, I saw exactly where it went. It was, if I remember right, it was 2 tenths high, 2 tenths right. So it was really, really close. It took me 3 shots to have a zero I trusted, and so there I was. I was re-zeroed that thing, and of course I wanted to go out and check it, and went over and got on a pretty stable prop away, kind of away from everybody, and it was some concrete concrete culverts. I remember ranging a target. I don't remember exactly what the distance was, but it was roughly 750 yards. And I ranged it through rangefinder and got a yardage on it and set my tripod up with my binoculars. And I was like, oh God, I probably am screwed up because I'm not going to be able to tell, where I wanted to make sure that I was tracking and everything was still jiving, And I remember thinking to myself, man, I think I might have made a mistake here, and threw the rifle up there. It was actually a buddy of mine shooting on a prop next to me, and I said, "Hey, do you mind coming over here and spotting me? I just put a new scope on. I just want to double check my dope at distance." And he's like, "Yeah." He comes over there and he's like, "Oh man, Mirage is bad." And I remember cranking in that scope, that the scope on that target, and all of a sudden the target was just bam right in my face, and I pulled the trigger and watched the bullet hit exactly. It was. I knew right then and there when I watched the first 2 rounds out of that rifle hit that target at 750 yards that the scope was not coming back off my rifle. Other, I wasn't Brandon wasn't getting the scope back. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think you caught, and it's funny because I had went on to go shoot my own stuff and talk to some of the other folks in the demo program, and I had heard him kind of walking away. He's like, I'm gonna put this thing right on, right now, and I was, I didn't really think anything of it. I was like, well, if he does, he does. And I actually didn't know until shit, man. I think the end of day one when someone else had called me and they were like, I can't believe Ward put the damn scope on that day, and I was like, oh, he did, because
it
I
was
didn't even
Caleb, I think.
know. Yeah, I think it was Caleb Pullum that was talking to me about it, and I was like, well, awesome, and man, it's definitely awesome to hear the feedback from the guys, and it's awesome to see a company that deserves so much to be a part of the market. I mean, they make some of the finest scopes on the planet, so it's good to kind of see your baby get out in the wild, that you've worked for, the better part of a year on, and it's it's pretty cool to hear the experiences. It's been a lot of fun. This is the most fun part, though. I think, for me it is. Oh man, I love the reticle. Like, I kind of like hearing that. So that's.
I love the reticle.
Well, I
It's
think contextually, right, what a lot of people may not understand about March and their relationships and their product development is that they work, with people like Brandon, with people like Tim, who's a national champion for F class, who's on the world team as a coach, and a lot of guys out there in the Bayou Rifle Club out there in Texas, which is just a powerhouse of F class competitors and bench press competitors, and they're getting real world, feedback on this and insight. And then you throw that on top of the fact, or maybe it's vice versa, that they have PhDs working, on how to develop these optics. And I've always been super fascinated with the Japanese culture and their obsession's probably not the right word, but their obsession with certain things and the intensity that goes into doing those things. Right, I've watched sort of a lot of documentaries on like the generational chicken place, right, or the generational like noodle place, right? That goes through Japan and in the apprenticeships you have to do. And I sort of think of there's that sort of same idea with scope development through there, and they have their own in-house development, which is very rare in this industry as well for optic development, right? And so when you start to pair those things on and you start to realize that they're really trusted in one discipline and then they're going to start to pair that into a new discipline, I got really excited, right? I mean, I was already sort of really fanning out when I was already out there, just generally about the optics. But when you were telling me and I was able to see that, like, oh, this is what you guys are going to be doing, this looks really interesting, this is very cool. And then being able to hear, real world experience through Shayne and Brandon, being involved in this process. Even though I don't compete in PRS anymore, it makes me that much more excited to see people get behind it and see people integrate it into their system and see how it plays out, right? And it sort of reminds me a little bit, just my experience from being behind optics is this last winter, I had a 65-inch TV, old TV, 6 years old, that I finally decided to upgrade, and I went with the 77-inch OLED. And that, I mean, it's like when you see it, you're like, holy crap, that's what movies can look like. And that's sort of the experience of looking through a March scope. And you're like, wow, like this is so clear, like everything looks so good. And again, this isn't to say that there aren't other optics that are out there that are highly capable, but it is an experience sometimes to look through these sort of things, and so that's been really cool. I know we're sort of getting towards the tail end of this, Brandon. I know you mentioned early on that there's some things from what I saw at SHOT Show to what's out now. Would you mind showing some of those? We might try to get some photos for you guys to overlay this, but for now, we'll take a look at what Brandon has.
Sure. So the scopes that you saw at SHOT Show were a prototype, shot show specific prototype. They were very, very close to the end production model. A couple things that have been added is the PRS logo, so PRS edition, that's here. Obviously, the March FX, all of their standard logo is on the other side. But the PRS logo is new for the production model. That was not on the SHOT Show version. The turret clicks have actually been modified even further to make them even more tactile relative to the SHOT Show version. And then there were some small changes here to the parallax marking system, where they just cleaned this up as far as the marking there. Everything else has gone unchanged from the model you saw, Mac, at SHOT. Yeah, tried to do it right the first time, but a couple
Yeah.
things I wanted to improve even further upon, and it's just a testament to March that we as shooters, me as an avenue, shooters truly have the ability to directly influence the scope that a brand is manufacturing. When I talk to individuals at March, when I talk to Mari as the COO and talk to the engineers, like, when is the last time that as a PRS competitor you can honestly say that you have had direct contact with optical engineers and COOs of companies building optics, and not just any optics, like tier 1 level, some of the best glass in the world, right?
Hmm.
So I encourage, like, I'm open to the criticism. I'm open to the blessings. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to have conversations about it, and just continue to try to build upon what March has already done here in the PRS market. And I have a feeling you're going to see more of these on the firing line, and I'm hoping Shayne stacks some hardware with him here shortly. He's real close already, so
I've been so close I could taste it a couple times, but we'll
yeah,
see.
we'll get there.
Yeah, you sort of mentioned a little bit about their how involved their leadership is, right? Their C-suite and things like that. And I just wanted to touch on this real quick. When I went to SHOT Show, it was sort of mind blowing to be able to have their creator there, and their owner there, and only speaks Japanese. Had to have it translated between us, but that was a special experience. I went to a lot of companies out there, and there were a couple out there, right, that had their owners there, but at the level that March is at, in what you would say comparable companies, you don't typically see them there, right? They're their salesman or their marketing coordinator, whoever it was, and so that was a really cool experience. That was really special, and I think it sort of just added a bit of class to that experience, with being over there and having March and just seeing, how much they are investing in having competent people there like yourself and Tim and Gary, and the other guys that were there to walk you through every detail, every development, every iteration that's happened with the development of these different scopes, and then have real world firsthand experience on how these are impacting the community, right? And as the technology grows and as we develop, more and more people coming into this community, these are the sort of things that get people excited, right? Pushing the boundaries, trying to find new ways to make this sport more accessible, but also make it more competitive is a difficult thing to do. And I think March is doing a great job. And I think you two, as ambassadors for March, I'm highly appreciative that you guys are out there, doing the good work and spreading the word. Before we jump off, I do guys want to give you guys an opportunity. If there's anything that I've missed about the optic, about the experience or anything like that, I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to get it all out, for the people that are considering, looking into this optic. Brandon, you have anything?
So I kind of mentioned it. I will tell you there is quite a list of guys that have already reached out, but I encourage you guys. We do have a demo program. I hear it all the time. Like, man, I'd love to look through that thing. It's hard to look through optics and make a $4,000 plus purchase without putting eyes on and hands on and I understand that as a competitor, and I understand that as an ambassador to March, and as a consultant, and really that's what drove the demo program. So if you see somebody with them, please, please, please get behind it. Don't hesitate to ask them. All the demo guys have all said they're willing to help if they've got it on the gun. If you want to be a demo person and you're looking to maybe get behind one, we're you know limited number of scopes that are in the demo program, and I'm only one guy. I make no promises, but reach out. You know, and I mean it. Eventually, there's gonna be they are going to be on fire lines, and you're gonna be able to see them, guys. But in the meantime, until there's more and more of them in the wild, um, we'll do whatever we can to try to get people behind them, because I think uh, Shayne, you're a true testament of this. I think once you get behind one, the rest of it speaks for itself. So um, I know, Shayne, you have a 22 match coming up that I think you were maybe going to do a side stage for people to look at. That might be an opportunity.
Yeah, we have a big rimfire match coming up at Gravestone next month. It's going to be probably one of the biggest rimfire PRS matches in the nation this year. And we're um, a couple side stages, and I'm gonna set that march up on one of the side stages just to allow people to look through it. And one thing I was gonna add is, you know, I'm traveling. Um, I'm traveling quite a bit this year. I'm shooting matches kind of all over the country, and if anybody sees me at a match and wants to check this thing out, I'm more than happy to you know let you take it for a test drive. It's I'm really blessed to be a part of this, and I think, like Brandon said, it really speaks for itself. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that I can, and give you Brandon's number so you can call him in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I love it. Please make sure you call after 11.
So far as being able to get a hold of you guys, typically I have, companies and owners on here, so it's a little more accessible. But I don't know if you guys have social medias that you want to share, an email or anything like that. That way they can get in contact with you guys.
Yeah, so I'm on Sniper Side. You can look up any of the PRS posts. You'll see me in there. My Sniper Side name is One Bad Thing 16. It's a throwback to a previous life of racing, but
Don't do
um,
it.
and but social media, I'm on Facebook quite heavily. I'm in most of the PRS pages, right? Here and there. Obviously, the paid PRS page, all of the different districts, especially Central. Um, and somebody can get you my number that way. I don't want to put it on the internet, but
Yeah.
somebody, if you're truly interested in getting behind one, or trying to leverage talking to me about one, honestly, I'm super open to it. Ask your friends. I've had a ton of guys send their buddy that's at a match to look through it, and then their buddy's like, "Dude, holy shit, you should buy one of these." That's happened a couple
Yeah,
times.
that happened with my scope. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's happened a couple times. If you see any of the Planet Ford guys, there's a couple of those guys that Rip Precision Planet Ford guys. They have them on their guns. So so yeah, you'll see more and more of them. I think this will be easier and easier as we get more and more of them in the wild. Obviously, we're on the front end of this thing. This is it's a relatively small Japanese company that takes pride in making sure every single scope that leaves the door is perfect, and they don't build 600 scopes a week, right? So it will take time, guys, but we'll get there.
And anything from you, Shane?
Yeah, I was just gonna say you can find me on Sniper's Hide also. I don't spend a whole lot of time on there, but it's SHAYNE Shane Ward on Sniper's Hide, and I have an Instagram that I try to post shooting content on. I'll be honest, I'm a really busy guy, and I do more shooting than I do posting about it. But I believe it's trigger underscore tickler underscore. Don't laugh at that, but it was it was something I planned to start putting out like training videos and that kind of stuff, and I just never have really uh, gotten got never have gotten it off the ground. But feel free to reach out to me if you got any questions. Also on Facebook at Gravestone. It's I believe it's Shoot Gravestone. But yeah, Gravestone's going to have a demo soon too, and so we're always out there if you want to come out and take a look at it there.
Yep,
Perfect. And
yep.
that's,
Jake,
go ahead.
sorry, Mac. Yep, Jake Graves is also on the list for the demo stuff, both for him and for the range. So, um, yeah, get out there. I know Jake's busy right now with some of the stuff that's happened here recently with the tornado, but yeah,
I'll make sure to link any websites or comment or any points of contact in the description if you guys are looking for it. So make sure to take a look out for that. Thank you guys so much for being out here, being on the podcast. Talk about your experiences, and particularly, one of my deep passions, which is optics and definitely March. For those of you guys that are listening today, thank you guys. And if you have an opportunity, get out to the range and take a shot. We'll talk to you guys later.